Have you ever wondered how companies, regardless of their size, can effectively innovate with AI? If that is the question, this episode would be interesting for you. We will be looking into what strategies do these big firms or clients need to adapt to ensure AI isn't just a buzzword, but a real driver of growth and transformation. In today's episode of the Extra AI podcast, we tackle these pressing questions with Dr. Jeff Standridge, a leading innovation consultant, growth strategist, and managing director at Conductor and Innovation Gently. Dr. Standridge, with his vast experience across five different continents, helps organizations and leaders generate sustained results in innovation, strategy, profit, profit growth, and organizational effectiveness. As a three-time best-selling author and a seasoned executive coach, Jeff has a wealth of knowledge on how AI can be integrated into business operations to drive significant and lasting change. So in this episode, Jeff will share three main things: effective AI implementation strategies of how can businesses of all sizes successfully integrate AI into their operations. Second, field insights, practical advice and lessons from Jeff's extensive work with diverse companies and clients. And third, the future AI trends. What can we expect in the evolving landscape of AI and innovation? So join us as we explore some real world examples of AI innovation, discuss the challenges and successes faced by companies, and gain some valuable insights from Jeff's rich consulting experience. Whether you are an entrepreneur, a business leader, or an AI enthusiast, this episode is packed with actionable strategies to help you harness the power of AI for your business. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe to Extra AI Podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. As always, you will find more interesting information at the end of the podcast. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the podcast conversation. All right, welcome back to Extra AI, a podcast series on AI and machine learning applications. Today we are going to have a topic around innovating with AI, strategies and insights that I would like to discuss with our esteemed guest, Mr. Jeff B. Strandage. Jeff, welcome on board.
It's great to be here. I appreciate you for having me.
All right, so I know everybody has a backstory or a personal story or a professional story about how we are doing what we are doing currently, whether it is innovating with some technologies or using AI and generative AI. Maybe could you give us a bit of a backstory from your end, whether it is a personal story or a professional story?
Sure. So I came to the innovation world after about a 20-year career with a data analytics company called Axiom Corporation, ACXIOM Corporation.
Mhm.
And Axiom Corporation was a data analytics firm predominantly for the marketing industry.
Mhm.
And I got the opportunity to see the very rudiments of machine learning and AI there in analyzing data around customer data and
Mhm.
being able to provide recommendations back to our large customers, Fortune, 1,000 customers uh, at scale, provide recommendations back in real time to website visitors, direct mail campaigns and others based upon the analytics that we were kind of crunching behind the scenes and the machine learning, so to speak, that was providing that data back to them.
Beautiful.
So while I'm not a data scientist myself, I was more on the executive side of that. That's kind of my first foray into seeing how what we now have, probably the rudiments of what we now have as generative and even predictive AI.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Any thoughts about, I know the world is moving at a very fast pace, particularly the technology field and the technology world. Any particular thoughts that you would like to share before we take a break and come into the actual meat of our conversation? about what is happening currently with all this, not only AI, but generative AI technologies and how it is kind of fast pacing what we are doing.
Yeah, so you're right. The technology, particularly with regard to AI and machine learning, is rapidly proliferating, so to speak, exponentially growing. And so, to see some of the things that are happening in the healthcare space around predictive AI. I think generative AI is fabulous, and it's there's a lot of great work out there. In fact, I'm involved in a company called Oxygen, Auxigen, Oxygen, which is really for entrepreneurs and to leverage some of the best business frameworks and to use AI to help them apply those business frameworks to their startup companies. But what I'm starting to see in the healthcare world, for instance, is a lot of the predictive AI, solving some of the really big challenges that exist in the healthcare world today. So, for instance, a scribe or a note-taking app that records conversation between a physician and his or her patient, and weeds out a lot of the banter back and forth and enables kind of a streamlined progress note to be captured in unstructured form in the charts, or being able to look at a database of untoward events or situations, risk database of sorts, and to be able to recognize the warning signs or the flags of where you might have an adverse medical event with a particular patient, because they're kind of flipping some of those flags, so to speak, predictively. So a lot of great things happening out there, and I'm excited to dig into more of that.
Beautiful, beautiful. I echo with your thoughts. Let's take a quick break and come back and get into the real meat of our conversation. Before I get into the topic of today's topic, about innovation and the strategies behind that. So what inspired you, Jeff, to become an innovation consultant and a growth strategist? I know there's a lot of happening out there, and what's the inspiration behind that?
So, as I mentioned a few moments ago, I spent a lot of time with a publicly traded company, really doing innovation and change management. So, I really come to the world of innovation as an organizational change agent. And I come to the world of entrepreneurship as an entrepreneur. So, working with a large publicly traded company, doing innovation and entrepreneurship work around the world, but doing it within the safety net of a corporate salary, so to speak. And so that's kind of how I define an entrepreneur. And about 8 years ago, made a decision to move away from the employed world and move into the world of innovation and growth strategy. And I chose to do that for more altruistic reasons than anything else. I started an entrepreneurship initiative in my home community here in Arkansas called The Conductor that was focused on securing third-party sources of funding from government organizations, institutions, nonprofit entities, and others, so that we could cultivate and drive innovation and entrepreneurship within our own state, the state of Arkansas, and have been deeply involved in providing that, what I call sponsored consulting. So it's free to Arkansas-based entrepreneurs below a certain level of size. And as a result of that, many larger companies started coming to us and saying, look, we need the same kinds of innovation and growth consulting, yet we know we don't qualify for the sponsored services. So that led to the creation of a sister company called Innovation Junkie, where I spend a lot of my time today.
Beautiful. I think you rightfully mentioned, I think first growing the home base and then improving over there and then cultivating that kind of an approach and getting into the bigger things is always wonderful to know that. And coming from your background and then seeing a lot of growth and a lot of innovation happening around, how do you see AI transforming these different enterprises and consumer businesses in the near future? I know you are coming in from this world of uh, the, the, the the states like Arkansas and then investing a lot and helping the customers and consumers grow. Any thoughts about how you see AI transforming all these things, whether it is a small company or a big
Yeah,
company?
you know, I hear a lot of people say, AI and the robots, and for those that are just on the audio podcast, I'm using up air quotes here. AI and the robots are going to take our jobs away from us, and I don't believe that to be the case. I believe what will happen is people in the workforce who become skilled in the proper and effective use of AI, generative AI particularly, will take the jobs of people who refuse to become skilled at the efficient use of AI. So it's not the robots that are taking our jobs; it's people who know how to deploy the robots, so to speak. So, I think as it becomes more consumable for the average person, uh,
Mhm.
it- we're only limited by our creativity in terms of how it's going to transform consumer facing businesses. I've grown to the point where I use it every day. I use it every day,
Right.
and I use it in ways today that I couldn't even have imagined a month or 3 months ago.
Right.
And I can't imagine what the next 6 to 12 to 18 months will hold in terms of my use and deployment of AI at that time.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, I know there is a lot of excitement out there, and hearing from different parts of the globe and different parts of the country about how things are being done, and like having these kind of conversations really, really excites me and inspires me as well.
Hmm. For
Um,
sure.
so, taking this further, what are some of these AI innovations that might be particularly interesting for you or your company as a whole? I know you've spun off another company called Innovation Junkie as well. So, what are those things that you're uh, technically looking into more with a bigger lens?
Yeah. So, being able to look at, and I shared a few moments ago the company that I've most recently invested in called Oxygen, Auxigen, Oxygen.ai.
Mhm.
What the founder of Oxygen has done is he has taken all of the or call it 20 to 25 of the top business frameworks like the Purple Cow, the Lean Canvas, the Why, How, What, the creation of OKRs and KPIs. He has taken those frameworks and built generative AI tools around how to feed a little bit of information around buyer persona and some of those kinds of things, standard offerings, and to be able to get past the blank page syndrome. For instance, someone who's trying to complete a lean canvas on their company, that first version is very, very difficult to create because we're staring at a blank canvas. And so it's what I'm seeing is it's increasing the speed with which a new founder can get their business concept created, and it can accelerate and advance the thinking in
Right.
terms of how. So not replacing the thinking of the founder or the entrepreneur, but actually adding fuel to the thinking and creating, where it might take me as a founder in the past, it might take me 10 versions of my lean canvas to get to a really good scalable business model. We're seeing it done with Oxygen in 2 or 3 iterations, maybe 4. And so it's really starting to fast track and drastically raise the level of thinking. So I use Oxygen as an example of other kinds of uses of AI that I think in the business world can help us analyze complex data sets very, very quickly and create thoughtful recommendations. They may not hit
Mhm.
100% at the 100% accuracy level, but even if they get 75% of the way there, then it's much easier to edit something than it is to start from scratch. And so that's where I see one of the single greatest uses of AI, and the way that I'm looking for uses of AI is how can I get the base level of analysis or the base level of work done that I can then edit and improve and to get that remaining, 10, 15, 25% to the finish line.
Great, great. I think you have laid it out very clearly, like how using these different tools out there, whether it is this AI or generative AI tools, how you can fast track what you are doing and how it can be realistically a very good co-pilot to you.
Mhm.
Uh, so with your experience, 20 plus years, and of course for the last 7 to 8 years, like you mentioned, with your uh, companies, whether it is with Conductor or whether it is with the Innovation Junkie,
Mhm.
you say that you initially started working with these smaller firms, and then now the bigger firms are also reaching out to you. But what are those typical challenges that are being faced by your clients, and why do you think that these are the significant issues that they are facing, and how are you addressing them?
So I see a couple of major issues with my clients.
Mhm.
One is the lack of a thoughtful process for innovating.
Mhm.
They've been doing the same things over and over and over for years, and the market is beginning to pull away from them because they don't have a thoughtful, repeatable process that they can use to always stay on the cutting edge with the services or products that they're providing with their clients. And so one of the things that we do then is we come in and provide some strategic thinking and some innovation sprints or innovation exercises with them to help them kind of challenge the status quo and think
Right.
about what their company, what's happening in the market, and how their company needs to innovate in order to stay ahead of the market for the next 3 to 5 to 7 years down the road. The second thing that I see is companies are most companies have some form of planning process. So
Mhm.
they do strategic planning, so to speak,
Right.
but it's usually heavy on planning and very light on strategy.
Right.
And it's almost completely absent an execution process wrapped around it. So what happens is someone every 3 years they conduct a 3 year strategic planning exercise. They bring in senior leaders from all around the company. They try to encapsulate everything that they're already doing within the company because they don't want anybody to feel left out. They really don't make any bold strategic changes to their business that's driven by innovation or innovation thinking. And so they just capture a plan of more stuff to do and just add that on to the stuff they're already doing, and they don't ever stop and reallocate resources. It goes in a big, thick 3 ring binder that's about
Mhm.
4 inches thick, and then they stick it on a shelf and pull it out in 11 and a half months and say, hey, let's see how we're doing. And that's really not, that's why strategic planning per se
Right.
gets a really bad rap or a bit really bad reputation within organizations. We talk about a strategic growth system, and that is a top-down process to answer 3 basic questions. Who are we? And so that
Mhm.
gets into the mission of the organization, the core values of the organization, the brand promise or what we want our customers to experience when they come into contact with us. So who are we is that first question. Where are we going and when will
Mhm.
we get there is the second question or second set of questions. That's our vision statement, which we see as an actual destination at a predefined date and time. By 12/31/2029, we will be blank. So
Mhm.
that's vision. The long-term targets, or what's sometimes called the strategic objectives, the short-term goals, or the annual kind of work plan or plan of work. And so that's the second question of a strategic growth system. But then what's mostly missing is the third question: how are we going to get there?
Right.
And how are we going to ensure that everyone remains accountable to this plan? And so that gets into establishing literally quarter by quarter priorities. It usually takes about 90 days for a company to get off track with their strategic plan. They build a plan, they're excited about it the first 90 days. Something happens that they didn't plan on that gets them distracted, and they look up and it's 11 and a half months later. And so we have an actual quarterly and advocate an actual quarterly planning process to build quarterly priorities that at the end of every quarter, we look at how we've done and we establish new quarterly priorities, key performance indicators, having an accountability chart where everyone in the organization that's responsible for elements of that strategic growth plan knows precisely what they're responsible for in the organization. And we have 100% accountability in that regard. And so we have number one, innovation, challenging the status quo. Number two, having a strategic growth system versus just a strategic plan. And then the third thing is that when we're working with clients, we often see that there are gaps or holes in their culture that prevent them from being optimally successful. And so we've identified 6 major areas that we refer to as the culture of excellence, and the 6 kind of cornerstones or pillars, if you will, that need to be in existence consistently for someone to build and execute against having that culture of excellence.
Beautiful, beautiful. I really echo with your thoughts when you're talking about how sometimes planning completely takes over and strategy gets a side seat or kind of get neglected when you're trying to reach out to everything and everybody. And then how innovation is not really, you're not thinking out of the box or not innovating.
Mm-hmm.
So this takes us to the question about, yes, these are things like where how your workforce because when you're innovating, when you're doing all this planning and when you apply the real strategic planning techniques and then use the right innovation techniques, there are situations where more often than not, you have to upskill your workforce and you have to get the employees to use AI effectively at scale. How do you see these happening when you talk with your clients and your customers and other prospects?
How do we get them to start using AI?
Yeah.
So one of the things, and I actually sit on the board for a fairly large health system here in Arkansas, and we've actually started an AI committee to begin looking at what's going to be the process that we use to proliferate the use of AI, to examine the technology, the AI technology that's out there that might help us. And that's kind of difficult in a healthcare world because you have to be very, very careful what you use. But one of the things that I have advocated is that we pick out, a handful of what I would consider technology forward leaders in the organization, directors, managers, and others, those that seem to be always kind of on the edge of using technology. And let's get them pro versions of ChatGPT and other basic tools. And let's challenge them to look for ways to make their jobs easier, to bypass a lot of that lower level work. And let's create a forum where they can come together on a regular basis and begin sharing those ideas, those best practices, so to speak, so that we can then, when we work at really trying to get the employee population to use it, we're not starting from scratch. We've got a core set of best practices that have been vetted by some of the leaders in the organization. And then looking at the technology that's out there for both non-clinical purposes, which would be easier to implement, like billing and coding and what have you, and then some of the things that are some of the tools that are being used for more clinical applications. We have to vet those a little more heavily. But that AI committee has been put together, and I have a meeting, I believe it's tomorrow or Monday with that group, is specifically to focus on how do we leverage AI, how do we examine what's out there, and how do we accelerate the use of best practices in that regard.
Beautiful, beautiful. So this is where I think you bring in some of these leaders who are a bit more tech savvy than the rest, and then kind of give them the much needed tools or much needed awareness, and then create them as the influencers in the organization.
Yep.
Beautiful. I know you briefly talked about it, but could you elaborate a bit more? We don't need to go into any specifics of confidentiality information, but any particular example when you're working with your uh, clients or customers about how you have used the various AI strategies or the innovation strategies in typical customer scenarios and how
Sure.
they have made better outcomes, how it
Sure.
have
Mhm.
delivered them. Yep.
Well, we have to start by talking about the three different types of innovation. There, at the basic level, there's incremental innovation, and incremental innovation is, it's been known for a long time as more process improvement or total quality management. We're making small incremental changes, but over a period of time, they may have a massive impact on the organization. Um, then we've got breakthrough innovation. Breakthrough innovation is where we take an existing business model and we apply a new technology to it. And one of the examples I like to use there is the smartphones, right? So the existing business model of having cell networks and cell towers and the ability for people to have a mobile phone that they carry with them has been around for a long time. But in 2007, 2008, we applied new technology with the existence of the smartphone. The same thing happened with Uber and taxis, right? So we had taxis for a long time, but Uber came and applied new technology to it. So it can be new technology applied to an existing business model, or it can be a new business model applied to existing technology, right? And so that's breakthrough innovation. And then we have disruptive innovation where something actually gets displaced. So I think of web streaming, video streaming versus cable TV. That's a great example of breakthrough technology. I'm sorry, disruptive technology. And so we think about those three forms of innovation. One of the single greatest things that we've done in helping our clients to innovate is taking a group of their leaders off site and running what we call an innovation sprint. So we've done this with groups from a half a dozen to over 100. And we put them into teams, and we basically pose a challenge question to them that says, what's the single greatest challenge that you're experiencing that if you overcame it, if you were able to overcome it, it would be a complete and total game changer for your organization. And then we take them through a very methodical process. It's really the scientific method. What's the problem statement? How do you quantitatively validate that problem statement exists and that it's a big enough problem to solve quantitatively? Then how do you qualitatively validate it by talking to some key stakeholders and making sure that they see the problem as in the same light that you see the problem? And then actually using some human-centered design or design thinking principles to design solutions according to that. So at the end of the day, we've been working with a team of, say, 100 people. We may have 15 or 20 teams that at the end of the day present their business problems and their very rudimentary solutions. We'll have a team of judges select those, and we'll select the top 3 or 4. And then I'll spend the next 3 or 4 weeks, sometimes 5 or 6 weeks, coaching them through the refinement of their ideas and their solution proposals. And then they'll take it to either an executive committee or to the board of directors with funding that's been allocated for the top innovation that comes to bear. So we've done that a couple of times with one client. Done similar kinds of things with other clients as well, but it may be with smaller groups. And so that's a best practice we have found in our working with clients that help them actually make innovation real within their organization.
Beautiful. I think I like the way you have kind of articulated the different kinds of innovation going there, like whether it is incremental innovation or breakthrough innovation, disruptive innovation, and how you kind of work with all these kind of things with your clients and customers. Any particular focus areas, I think now coming back to your organizations, like whether it is the conductor or the innovation junkie, any particular, I know your mission statement and I got your vision, but any particular targeted focus areas that you have, like industries? When I talk about
Yeah.
targeted, what are your users, end users, your industries, your clients?
Yeah, we do a lot of work in healthcare
Mhm.
with federally qualified health centers. So if you know anything about federally qualified health centers, also called FQHCs, these are the clinics that are generally out in the rural areas of the country that have a special funding mechanism from the federal government to enable them to provide care not only to people like you and me who may have health insurance, but also to
Mhm.
folks who don't have health insurance as well. They can have a sliding scale. And so we
Mhm.
do a lot of work with them. We do a lot of work with just tech and tech enabled companies. Technology company being where the product or service that they provide to their customer is a technology product or service. Technology enabled, where the product or service isn't technology oriented, but the provisioning of that service is heavily dependent upon technology. And then other knowledge based industries. Now, we'll do some work with high speed or advanced manufacturing, rather.
Mhm.
But mostly it's in, we kind of put that in the tech enabled world.
Right.
But yeah, tech enabled, knowledge based industries and healthcare.
Beautiful, beautiful. So when you do all these, I think there is, I know you maintain, you have put down together some best practices, some innovation strategies, and the way you work with these companies and then get them to the much needed outcomes. But is there a way or how you measure your effectiveness of these solutions that you're providing? Is there a
Sure.
way that, yeah, how do you evaluate this effectiveness? Because that is how things will be easily measurable, right?
Yeah, so we're very heavily focused on measurements, and one of the first ways we do that is we ask our client how they're going to measure success,
Mm-hmm.
and help them think through how to measure the impact of the work that we do with them. And so we establish some metrics at the early part of the engagement. Many times those metrics revolve around revenue generation or revenue growth,
Mm-hmm.
um, EBITDA or
Mm-hmm.
cash flow, actually having bottom line impacts there. Sometimes we find that their innovations are around the recruitment and retention of talent.
Mm-hmm.
So we look at the retention rate improvements, or we look at for recruitment, we look at their time to fill. So the time it takes them to fill a position from the time they post it. If they're at 60 days, they want to get to 45 days or 30 days. And so we really help them home in on what metrics are going to produce the greatest results to them, and then how can we build our engagement to drive those success outcomes.
Yeah, beautiful. So, like you said, like you in the initial part of the conversation, you said that you started in Arkansas with a smaller community, and then you're growing. So, are
Mhm.
you still focused on the local communities over there, or are you also growing? Are you now available globally? Uh,
Yeah, globally. So Innovation Junkie is that billable consulting firm that we created that is boundaryless. We go wherever we need to go. For that sponsored consulting that we do with
mhm.
startups in Arkansas, that is, I have a team of people who really lead that for us now. I still contribute to that, as does my business partners. But I spend the vast majority of my time focused on the Innovation Junkie side, which is where we are boundaryless.
Beautiful. And I believe there is really a lot of potential now that a lot of these, with these new technologies and with these new innovations coming in, I believe you and your teams also invest in all of these newer technologies. So if you have to, now I think this gets to the interesting question, or the $1 million or the $1 billion question that I say, that I talk in my podcast. How do you differentiate yourself from the competition out there? Because this is one thing, right? I think we all, whether it is individual or companies, or whether it is
Mhm.
locally or globally, how we keep innovating ourselves, we keep learning new things. But how do you kind of differentiate yourself from the
Sure.
competition out there?
I would say there's a couple of ways. Our brand promise to our clients is results-driven insights, tools, and connections. So we're constantly throughout our engagement with our clients number one, we're results-driven. Number two, we're constantly looking for new insights we can provide to our clients, new tools we can connect them with to make their lives better, and new connections that we can make for them in order to help them grow. So that's number one. Number two is we're not just consultants. Uh,
Mhm.
so I didn't tell you about our venture fund called Cadron Capital Partners, where we actually invest and write checks in companies as well. And collectively, we've probably either through our own fund, other funds that we've been directly involved in, or personal investments that we've made directly, between the principals of the company, have probably orchestrated over 120 investments, direct investments into companies. And so we come to the table as number one, former operators and existing
Mhm.
operators, as investors, but
Mhm.
also as advisors and board members. So I spent half a day yesterday in a board meeting for a fintech SaaS company that I've been on the board of ever since they raised funds for the very first time. I helped them with their very first fundraise. So we bring all of that collective experience as operators, investors, and advisors to the table. And our experience is not limited to theories. Our experience is not limited to only academic research. Our theories are not limited, or our experience is not limited to theories espoused by great management thinkers. It includes those things in addition to having to have made payroll ourselves, having had carry a bag as a salesperson, having traveled globally, working in multiple geographies around the world. So I would say that's a pretty big differentiator between our firm and a lot of the consultancies that are out there as well.
Beautiful. I really like the aspect that you have explained about how you are differentiating by not only being the innovators, but also the investors and the contributors and other aspects of it. I know you also you have authored a lot of books out there
Mhm.
about maybe do you want to talk a bit about your books that you have
Sure.
authored and how I know you have you also have this three-time best-selling author of the Innovators Field Guide. Uh, it would also be interesting for the audience to know a bit about that.
Sure. I have a couple of books that are very similar in format. One's called the Innovators Field Guide, and one's called the Top Performers Field Guide. Those can be found. Amazon has them. Barnes and Noble has them as well. They are meant to be small books that can be thrown in a briefcase or put in a backpack and taken with you. Each of the vignettes, or each of the chapters, if you will, is a reading focused on a specific aspect of innovating or top performance or business, and with a few, 3 or 4 questions at the end to really guide their thinking and how they take that information and apply it. My business partner and co-author, Jeff Amorine, another Jeff, we're called the Jeffs in our industry a lot of times. We wrote a book in 2021. We released it in 2021 called Creating Startup Junkies. So, because we are investors and entrepreneurial support consultants in Arkansas predominantly, for that sponsored work that we do, we haven't, we're kind of in an unexpected place. We're not Silicon Valley. We're not Boston. We're not Austin, Texas. We're Middle America, Arkansas. And so we wrote a book that really chronicles about 15 years of entrepreneurial ecosystem building, called Creating Startup Junkies, Building Sustainable Venture Ecosystems in Unexpected Places. And so we talk in that book about the 4 pillars of entrepreneurial ecosystem building, like talent development, entrepreneurial culture, uh, community engagement, and the engagement of flagship institutions in helping to create the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and finally access to capital at all stages of venture development. And so our book kind of outlines our tenets and our approach in that regard.
Beautiful, beautiful. I really like the aspect of explaining like how, like when you take when you take a place like Silicon Valley or the Boston or Bostons of the world, it's
Mhm.
easier to innovate there. It's easier to understand and for the inspirational purposes. But I think this book that you mentioned that you co-authored with your partner, where how you can build these startup kind of a culture or a startup kind of an environment in these other places, I think that will be very helpful and useful for the audience or for any upcoming entrepreneur. Beautiful. I know I try to keep my conversations under the 1 hour mark so that there's much more uh, focused discussions. Any closing remarks or key takeaways that you would like to provide to the audience? And maybe also like if somebody wants to reach out to you, how they
Sure.
can, or maybe you want to speak out a few things about that.
For sure. One of the things I will offer to your listeners is we have a strategic growth diagnostic called Growth DX, and it can be found at growthdx.ai.
Mhm.
And it is basically a diagnostic that the senior leadership team of an organization can all complete, and it evaluates the company against about 75 best practices that are categorized into 7 different diagnostic domains: revenue velocity, which is the speed, power, and effectiveness of the sales, marketing, and messaging efforts; organizational effectiveness, operational effectiveness, leadership effectiveness, innovation readiness, digital readiness, and financial disciplines. And I'd be glad to offer a free Growth DX and a briefing of the results following that to any of your listeners that would be interested. They go to growthdx.ai and
Mhm.
request that. Secondly, they can reach out to me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. And again, it's Jeff
Mhm.
Standridge on LinkedIn, Jeff S at innovationjunkie.com or jeffstandridge.com. And I'd be happy to interact with any of your listeners that might want to reach out.
Beautiful. Amazing to have this conversation with you. Look forward to getting you back again some other time for a little more focused conversations on the other topics. I know we couldn't do a lot more.
This sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jeff. So as we conclude this insightful episode on innovating with AI strategies and insights, we would like to first extend our deepest gratitude to Dr. Jeff Standridge for sharing his invaluable knowledge and expertise. Jeff, your strategies and real world examples have given us a clear understanding of how AI can drive innovation across businesses of all sizes. And to our dedicated listeners, thank you for your continued support and engagement. Your curiosity and feedback are what drives us bring forward such enriching discussion. If you haven't already subscribed, please make sure to subscribe to the Extra AI podcast on your preferred platform to stay updated with our latest episodes. As always, I'll be tagging Dr. Jeff on the LinkedIn post. So if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to Jeff directly. Alternatively, you can also reach out to me, Raghu Banda, and I can put you in touch with Dr. Jeff. You could also reach out me on my other social media channels like Twitter, X, or Threads with RK Banda, my handle. And we have our website, extraai.com, xtrawai.com, where you can go and find humongous amount of lot of other episodes in the realm of AI. We are excited to announce that we have many more fascinating topics and industry leaders that are lined up for our season 10 and other episodes. So stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations on AI and its transformative potential. Until next time, keep exploring the world of AI with us on Extra AI. Thank you for listening. Have a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening wherever you are tuned in from. Happy predicting the future with AI technologies. This is your host, Raghu Banda, signing off. Thank you and bye bye.